Yes, VFX world. Welcome to episode 4 of the VFX Script Podcast with Motus VFX. We're over in Dublin, Ireland today to speak to someone who has been one of the main reasons for the growth in the VFX industry over here. Almost 100 credits to his name. Things like Game of Thrones, Stranger Things, Penguin, and recently Shogun. And I get to have the pleasure of calling him my friend as well. Mr. Ed Bruce, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, thank you, Kurt.
Mate, thanks for being on. Really appreciate it. And also, since we agreed to do this, nominated in the VAS categories as well. So huge congrats on that.
Yeah, it's fantastic for the company. There's three nominations.
That's wicked, buddy. That's wicked. And I know that we're going to be talking about this beautiful, shiny thing in front of us and how that came to pass, which is epic. But before we get into that, you had quite an interesting sort of route to the visual effects industry, should we say? So give me a little sort of rundown about
how I got
Ed pre-VFX.
Yeah, I mean, I think, anyone that's been in the industry for 20, 25 years tends to have come from a different channel. And primarily it's because, when I finished school in the middle of the 90s, the sort of careers advice and guidance didn't really know much about the film industry. So I wasn't particularly academic. It was okay. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I was mad passionate about film. I love film. Some people like books or music. For me, it was film. But I didn't really know there was jobs or an industry or anything to do with film. Somehow they just magically appeared, came from Hollywood. So when it came to sort of the end of my school days, when I was picking a degree, what should I do next? I was kind of steered a little bit towards engineering. And, I got a little bit fascinated. I ended up doing a degree in computer-aided product design, which was interesting. I enjoyed it, and it was a great experience, going away to college and growing up. But as I got nearer the end of the degree, I realized I wasn't really enjoying the engineering side, but more actually the presentation side. But I ended up sticking with it. I went out to live in Florida for nearly a year, working for a company out there doing a bit of engineering design. And then when I came back, I met an Irish girl and, followed her and moved to Ireland. And that was in the end of 99 to start of 2000. And I got a job in a coffee shop. Didn't want to do engineering, didn't quite know what I wanted to do. Unfortunately, she had a colleague in her workplace that's sibling worked for a post house. And I got a job as a runner, and most people in the industry know what a runner is, and it's, going making teas and doing errands and stuff for the post-production company and their staff. So I did that in a very small, almost boutique post-production house in Dublin called Pluto.
Mm-hmm.
And I was incredibly fortunate because I got to kind of meet a few real key people that have been in my profession and life and still are, that became mentors and sort of lifelong friends. Also taught me my trade. My main mentor, a guy called Hubert Montag, very much took me under his wing, taught me a lot about not just the ability to do the visual effects, and at that particular moment it was 3D for me, but also how to navigate just the business world, but client interaction. And we worked there for a couple of years, and then all of us pretty much upped and moved to screen scene.
Okay.
So I think it was the end of 2002, start of 2003. We all moved to screen scene. Continued predominantly doing commercials, a little bit of broadcast work, mainly commercials. And then I would say probably around 2006, 2007, I started finding myself standing on set. And that was in its first part as send somebody down to make sure it doesn't go a bit wrong. Didn't really know what I was doing other than being there as almost like an artist to give make sure there's a marker there so it can be tracked, or, that blue screen's in the wrong place. Really basic. And then project to project, started growing a little bit of confidence. And then in 2010, Game of Thrones came to the island of Ireland and was shooting in Northern Ireland. And there was an opportunity for us to get on the project, do some VFX and post-production, which we did. We decided as a company that was a really good moment to kind of open like a separate department just purely for VFX. So off I went, me and my lonesome, in an empty room, with a bit of a shopping list to make, what we need to have a VFX company. And I first realized as much as I need kit and equipment, I need people. And that really is the number one message of my sort of professional career is the people. I had a producer, I had some coordinators, started hiring staff, and we got through the first project, and began moving on from there.
Would you say that your time as an engineer, being out in Florida, was there any transferable skills? Is there anything that you did back in them days that you sort of transfer into your VFX career?
Certainly on my initial job as a 3D artist and 3D generalist, there was a lot of 3D modeling to the engineering side. We'd design something and then we'd model it in 3D, and then I might present it, light it, make it look nice as a little product. So there's a little bit of that was transferable. I think today still there's a little bit of the structure of the way my brain works.
Okay.
There's sort of how you break things down, because VFX isn't just what you see on the screen at the end. There's a sum of all these parts that need to happen mostly in the right order to make sure it all gets on the screen. So my brain still thinks a little bit engineering, how to do that, how to break things down. So that's definitely a transferable skill. With
you. Okay. So you've started the VFX brand and you have gone from yourself to what you are now, and in between, the likes of, as you mentioned, Game of Thrones, Stranger Things, Black Widow, all of these titles. And I would probably say that visual effects in Ireland has significantly grown in the last 10 years. Some people might say that that's down to tax credits, and that might be part of it, of course. Regardless of tax credit, you need to be able to run a creative, successful, efficient business. I mean, how have you made that happen, and how important has the team been in making that happen?
I think the first thing to say, not to go too much into tax incentives, but the word incentive, it's almost a reason, just an extra reason to look. But once they look somewhere, they need to find something.
Mm-hmm.
So Ireland's post-production facilities have been around for 35, 40 years. But in terms of VFX, there's a couple of companies around about the same time, 2010, started developing, and now there's 5 or 6 companies out here that do VFX. But for us, Game of Thrones was a great initial project because it was a catalyst. Obviously, became an incredibly known brand after the first season. But it showed us what we wanted to be, and showed us how and what level we need to be at. Because when we started Game of Thrones, again, very lucky, the people you meet. I met the supervisor, a guy called Adam McGuinness, who's very, very shared a lot of his skills and shared his knowledge, and really helped with the technical to really push where it needs to be. And of course, HBO, their standard is as high as it can be, and it taught us what we needed. When Game of Thrones finished that first season, we were taking on new projects, and the growth had to start from local projects, what Ireland had to offer, Irish film industry, the UK and Europe. I often say you're only as good as the opportunity you're given. So in the first few years of us developing the company and the brand, we were working on, ITV, Sky shows, BBC dramas, and much, much smaller budgets. But we'd get a sequence or a beat, and then we'd work them to that same level that we've learned and got to on Game of Thrones, and then kept, pushing it, inching forwards. And as we did that, doors started opening in LA, and that started opening from all the studios, and then the brand starts getting a little recognition on international award stages with certain award wins and VES nominations and wins and so forth. And then that just slowly helps, again, a little bit like incentivize people to trust in SSVFX. They're going to deliver a quality of work. And that's really what we've had to do since 2010 is focus on the quality. Creative is really important. The tax incentive and value, that's, a given for any company. But really focus on delivering quality and making sure it's on time. And that's all about people. You can have all the machines, all the kit in the world, but you have to have a team of people. We've been able to hold on to and build our local Irish talent. We've spent a lot of money and time over the years with internships and traineeships to bring people in, young people into the Irish industry, train them up. We're delighted that a lot of them have stayed with us. So even, for example, with the Emmy win, my colleague Nicholas Murphy, who won the Emmy too, he was one of the first hires back in 2010 as a PA and went through, PA coordinator, supervisor, producer. And
I'd love to have seen Nico back in 2010.
He was younger. I think we all were. And again, another person that's been part of the journey is with us. And there's so many across it. And particularly when you have that continuity, shorthand, especially across the creative, that means you can kind of always punch a little bit above your weight.
Yeah.
You're able to know what you can do. And off the back of that, then you can start hiring people in with their specific skill sets for specific projects. We've had a couple of substantial scale projects that have helped us make a little bit of a bigger leap forward. Like when The Irishman came, that obviously Martin Scorsese had a big reputation for the film. That helped us develop one of our specialty wings, which is in de-aging and facial augmentation. And from there, we've worked on a lot of films doing that. Often people will come to us because of their knowledge of our de-aging and then find out we do all other manner of VFX. I can't stress enough that a VFX company is its people and nothing else.
Yeah.
Four walls and machines, even that's changed. Since COVID happened, the four walls have changed.
Yeah.
But the people are the same.
It's interesting, and it's also nice to hear someone talking about, the team being part of that success. And look, I guess the reality is without a team that is behind you, things like, the Emmy in front of us, I guess, isn't possible. Which is a massive achievement, by the way. I mean, I absolutely loved Shogun. I think a lot of people did, to be honest. I think when we were watching it and talking about it, we knew it was going to be mega, and I think the work that you guys did on that was absolutely phenomenal. So let's talk about Shogun a little bit. Take us back to getting awarded the projects. What's the thought process there? How much is involved from there to starting?
So initially, it was just an email where to get engagement with the clients. And, like all projects, you kind of see if there's already a bit of a known subject. And as soon as somebody said Shogun, I was transported back into my childhood watching the original TV series.
Yeah.
So I already knew the book, I already knew the original TV series. So I had a little bit of an understanding of what it may be. But very quickly, meeting Michael Clyde, who's the independent supervisor that looked after it, you could see there was something special about the show.
Uh-huh.
He very much, became obviously a passion project for a lot of us. You could see that passion in him. You could see how invested he was in the show, and that's infectious. So very quickly, as he was describing what the needs were of the show, before we even started bidding, we drank the Kool-Aid. We were in. This was going to be something unique, and it is quite rare that these projects can happen. I've had a few in my career where moons sort of align. From the script is great. The cast performances, costume, location, everything, all the departments, and you start seeing things align. I think it was 2021. We were on the show for about 2.5 years.
Yeah.
I think it was 2021. So it was just coming out of COVID. So we were remote, and obviously shoot locations were challenged. So originally they planned to do a bit of a shoot in Japan, but because of COVID, they then focused in British Columbia. But from those first meetings and first conversations that led into sort of bid packs and what the VFX work that he had in mind for SSVFX, we could see the scope and scale. And the scope and scale then triggered, well, this is going to need a big team. So we were mainly tasked with building Osaka in 1600s feudal Japan. Now Osaka's very, very different today.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of change happened. So we had to really, it's almost like an animated film. We had to build everything. Yes, there was going to be some practical shots where we were going to be extended upon, but because we were very aware very quickly that we're going to be in this city throughout the whole series and we're going to see different views from different places, it was always going to be driven by the storytelling and where people were traveling to or where they were looking and how it related. So we need to be really accurate with our build. So I knew that in building a city from the ground up and every ingredient, from not just the buildings and their structures, but, fabrics, the roadways, street furniture, horses, thousands and thousands of people, birds on fire, like every single ingredient, the volume of foliage and trees, all native to the area. We had the favela and the bay, all the ships and the boats and the smaller boats. There was so much to build. The shopping list and the research and development and historian aspect, because Shogun had a fantastic historian on there, and we had our own research team to go and find out everything about everything.
Awesome.
Just even things like the tops of some of the roofs, the way in which the structure was created and stones would hold down the roof. And we had to learn, the types of plaster and the woodwork, and just to be authentic. Now, there's very little reference for 1600s. So we were relying on a lot of old drawings and sketches on wooden blocks and little models that were in history museums and stuff to guide us. And then we'd look at other places around Japan that may have similar architecture than Osaka. Osaka was burnt down, I think, twice, so everything got rebuilt. So there was not much left from the 1600s. Even the main palace Tenshu, that had been rebuilt. So, what was really important to Michael and effects and the team is that everything was authentic. We really wanted to make sure that if the locals out in Osaka watched the show, they would appreciate it. They would feel it's authentic and believable. And that was a journey in itself. And then the crew that needed to complement that, because of all the different disciplines to create all this asset. And trying to explain without going down a bit of a nerdy geek fest on the scale of an asset that was about 2 miles square of the city structure, and then the mountain range, and then the estuary and the sea. To build that, because we had a few shots that kind of showed the whole landscape and some shots that did flyovers across it. To build that landscape that can just sit in a machine and then can be rendered and then can be composited, there's a lot of, back to my engineering brain, a lot of our team were scratching their heads and, figuring things out, solving problems. In the end, I think there's about 150 of the people in SSVFX on the project.
It's fascinating. I think it's awesome to hear. And the fact that you was there from concept all the way through, the fact that there were so many people involved to create something over those 2.5 years. You said you was on there. I mean, look, obviously, success side, you were awarded the MA, which is amazing. But throughout that process, what kind of challenges were you faced with creatively? What were some real sticking points, or maybe you might just say, look, everything was a first pass and
no, of course,
and nailed it. But
I think anyone who works in VFX knows that I say the finished pretty picture at the end as a journey to get there.
Yeah,
and I always do a bit of analogy about a mechanic. A good mechanic has all these tools, but he walks straight to drawer number 2 and pulls out the right spanner to go and do the job because he knows what he needs. But sometimes, you have to try a few different things. I think we found probably the scale of everything, and just the continuity of making sure that we're at the palace here, or there's a journey to the prison. So the prison is here and they're located. Now, of course, the shoot locations were either a backlot or a location, and very different.
Yes.
But we had to make sure they all tie together. Having Michael and his team, because as I say, their level of passion and diligence was second to none, and that sort of drives us to not meet the same standard, but it creates a level of ownership. It was a fantastic experience for that. But the challenges often happen from maybe some unique shots that were particularly difficult. And we had one shot which was a journey through a forest, and we were removing a bit of forest and then extending the forest so we had a path lead back to Osaka. So, and the camera was craning, so there was lots. I mean, the roto prep team did a phenomenal job. When you first spot a shot and there's trees and branches blowing in the wind, and we were all removing them to get behind to then also extend and add more trees. So that became a challenging shot just because of the level of detail in every discipline to get there.
Yeah.
The burning city and particularly the burning pigeons. That was something that started off as a bit daunting and a bit challenging to get, an organic creature with all its feathers flaying and burning. But actually, again, a little bit things that surprise you. Our animator and modeler, who rigged and animated the bird, his first pass at doing all the pigeon work we did and flying, it clicked. I mean, I hadn't seen him animate a bird before, but it clicked. And when you say about version 1s, that was really, really low version numbers on that. And then, of course, that was a really great base for our effects guys to add all the smoke and the fire and the embers that came off the bird. So that was something I thought was going to be really challenging and ended up being smooth. I think from a technical point, the challenges are all about making sure it could render, making sure that the level of detail is present, particularly on shots where the camera moved. You may have for example, the Tenshu Palace asset where we had scene in close-up. So we had really high res textures and really high level of detail. But when it was tiny in the background, if we try to push that level of detail through the render farm, it would have a little fit. So we did have to work hand in hand, creative and our pipeline and engine team, to make sure all that behind the scenes technicals went as smoothly as it can. There were definitely nights when you could feel the heat coming out of the render farm, when I'm sure the electricity bill was spinning round and round. But in terms of everything else, we were blessed with time.
Yeah. So
the 2.5 years is an absolute blessing on a show of that detail. Originally, the post schedule was much shorter, and a bit due to COVID, a bit due to FX's ambition to sort of really expand and really push the show, we got more time. And that really, really, really helped because we were able to focus on the storytelling and focus on that finished quality.
Fantastic. And it's funny when you're talking about, the time duration and how that was a blessing, because I'm sure there's times when that's not the case, and it's we've been given 12 months, 18 months, and actually it shortens down to.
I mean, it's a challenge both ways.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the challenges on Shogun was that the schedule, when it's expanding, means that you have to reshuffle your team and restructure a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
Like most shows, if you foresee a show being a year and it's suddenly 6 months, well, you almost have to double your team.
Yeah.
Or if it ends up being 2 years, you almost need to thin out your team because, they're still related to the price of a shot and the price of the creative.
Yeah.
So there's definitely, Nico and the production team certainly earned their crust throughout that project because there was a lot of moving parts, and schedule was one of those components that kept them busy. You
were working on some pretty cool things alongside Shogun, realistically, as well, weren't you?
Yeah. So the rest of the teams, the rest of the supervisors, a lot of great shows. It was a busy period. Again, fortunate coming out of COVID. The industry suddenly boomed and everybody wanted content, so we were busy. Pre the strikes, and the strikes all went slowly down, and now it's slowly going back up again. But yeah, we've been very fortunate that we have a continuity of work, we have a continuity of clients. They keep coming back, because of the quality of work, which has kept us busy enough to survive through the strike period.
You had, look, touch wood, we seem to be having a bit of a recovery phase now. It's been a long time since those strikes happened, and post-recovery seems to be on the way. It was tough on everyone, but you managed to still do a couple of cool projects throughout that period as well, which is awesome. Gladiator 2 being one that recently came out. Real quickly, and we'll skip on from the strikes. But how did you guys sort of find that, navigate it?
A little bit like you learn from everything. The COVID period was an interesting moment because I went around the facility on a Friday and said there's this COVID thing happening. Everybody go home. We'll sort things out. We'll get you working remotely. And within a couple of weeks, we were fully functioning. Everybody was in their homes and bedrooms working away, and there was a continuity of business. And it taught us a lot about how to be reactive and how to make sure we solve problems. When the strikes came, there's a hell of a lot of luck involved, because I know some vendors were on the bad side of that and some were on the lucky side. We had just been awarded a few shows, so we had shows in progress. We had a couple of shows that were mid show production and then went on a pause, and then we came back, but we had enough to keep us going through the strikes. Yes, like everywhere, we had to cut our cloth a bit and reduce the numbers. But we had enough good projects to keep all our core team and some going through the strikes, and got to deliver shows like Gladiator 2 and Penguin and Lady in the Lake.
Yep.
Which were, again, each one of them fantastic shows to be part of. And the original Gladiator was the first DVD I ever purchased, and then watched all the makings of and stuff, and big Ridley fan. So the work on that was fantastic. And the supervisor, Mark Bukowski from ILM, that was on it, again, another fantastic individual collaborator. I have an expression that don't buy a dog and bark yourself. He came to us. He wants us to collaborate. He wants everything we do well, and and just a gentleman. That project was wonderful to be part of, and great to see the final finished piece. And I saw the breakdowns from ILM just the other day, and the work is phenomenal. And that's part of what I love about the industry, is we all stand on the shoulders of each other. We all learn off each other, all inspired by each other. The Penguin was a brilliant show to be part of. I'd worked with a supervisor, a guy called Johnny Han, previously on The Nevers.
That's right, yeah.
Which received us an Emmy nom.
Yep.
And that was a great show, and learned a nice, lovely shorthand with him. He's another collaborator. He's very technical. He's a fantastic guy. Very different to different soups. Everyone's different.
Sure.
But another project where storytelling, everything was driven by storytelling. And Irish connection with Colin Farrell in it.
Yep.
Very quickly, we could see this was going to be a great show. Seeing his performance, we put the costume on, incredible prosthetics and makeup. When he put that costume on, and he'd switched into Oz, we knew it was going to be a great show. I think we were nearly on a year on that show, just under a year. That was a really good experience.
You've done a few projects. You've worked on a few, mate.
Yeah, no, look, from myself individually over the years, but particularly the company, let's say branding, but those baby steps we made in the 2010 onwards, just building up a bit of a reputation of it's done on time, price is good, and the quality's great. Some of our shows, our initial shows, we did a BBC drama called Ripper Street, very low budget. It did really well in sort of the award circuit. And what I learned very quickly is, even when you submit work, your peers get to see it. We did ITV drama called Moonfleet, really low budget, not much viewers. We did lovely ships at sea and stormy sea stuff. And again, our peers in the States and across the UK got to see it. And it just slowly helped build the brand on two fronts, actually. One, from clients, they go, oh, there's a company out on Ireland that can do some great work, but also in the artist pool.
Yeah.
Because in the first few years, it was quite a challenge to find certain artists to bring them to Ireland because they didn't know who we were and they didn't even know if we had the right type of projects that would elevate their career.
Yeah.
But as they start seeing the work, and see the quality and the opportunity that we give them, because we're not an ILM or a DNEG, so our crews would be much smaller on a project. So you might actually have, if you're a comper, an opportunity to comp a much bigger shot with us than you may do at another facility. So we slowly started getting a good reputation on both sides, the studio side and the artist side. And that's really helped us, particularly the artist side, because again, as you well know, crewing up, particularly in the time of COVID when everyone was busy, is a challenge. So every little advantage you may have helps. Now crewing up is less of a concern. We're a known brand, with each year, particularly things like the Emmy and now these VES nominations. Our brand awareness, people are aware of us. It really means that we can tailor the positions that we really want to help bring on our departments.
Got you. Well, I won't on camera ask you which of your almost 100 credits is your favourite. You tell me that in the pub after.
Yeah. Well, they're all part of the journey, and each show has a different shot or a different challenge or a different relationship, because I actually, not that I forget, but some of the visual sides of it is less of my memory and enjoyment. The personal relationships, I'm incredibly blessed, not just with the crew that we've grown and built in Ireland and SSVFX, because there's some phenomenal people first who are also good at what they do. But I look at my own journey, as you say, nearly 100 credits. There's waypoints of the different people I've met at the right moment in time. Yeah. Just before Game of Thrones, I met a guy called Mark Weigert who worked at a company called Uncharted Territory. And I went out to Germany to his facility while he was working on a Roland Emmerich film. And like a sponge, I was asking lots of questions, not just, how many kit machines we needed and how big a render farm and, but in terms of managing the crew and managing people and what to expect, pitfalls, and just a real kindness of sharing the knowledge. I said when we went into Game of Thrones, Adam McGuinness was there, Irishman. I got to meet Pablo Hellman, another just fantastic human. He's just finished Wicked, which is amazing work. But he, again, sharing his knowledge.
Yes.
We all rise together. And, throughout my career, I've met people like that are equally as passionate. Michael on Shogun, has become a good friend. That's 2.5 years. And then since then, there's only 3.5 years of knowing him, been part of that journey. And our journeys and careers are, entwined now together. That's what motivates me the most. And I know it does with a lot of our crew. When, for example, a Penguin came back, a lot of the key crew would obviously knew Johnny before, and it's straight away, oh, that's a project I'd love to work with Johnny again. That's how it works, and that's what excites me. Less about the individual project and the shots,
Love to hear that, buddy. That's awesome. And, I think it sounds like there's an exciting future ahead for SSVFX. I mean, let's talk about 2025 and beyond. How do you see things playing out? For
I think
guys?
Look, the world and particularly the film industry is kind of readjusting itself off the back of the strikes, but also off the back of there was such a boom in the quantity of work created in COVID. Everybody was at home, so everybody wanted to watch, and so there's a large demand. It's settling down now. So it's a bit like pendulum swings. Now the world's settling. I don't think there's ever going to be as much content demand as there was post-COVID, and it's going to settle back down a little bit. But, there's visual effects in everything. Mm-hmm. If we're just talking about the visual effects department of filmmaking, invisible visual effects is in literally everything.
Yes.
It used to be, visual effects was kept for just these big sort of tentpole films. It's in everything. And you'd be surprised the shot counts on a lot of shows, that you don't see as visual effects supporting all the other departments, whether like in the Penguin, we supported the prosthetics and the makeup department with ours doing some augmentation on his body and doing some facial work. That's a small bit of supporting a department. I think over probably the next year, slowly come back for everybody as an industry, and we'll just find this new norm.
Mm-hmm.
But when you talk about these big tentpole films, they'll still have thousands of artists and thousands of visual effects shots, and they'll always need doing, and because it's always part of storytelling.
Yes.
For you to tell a story like a Marvel film with the superheroes flying around, that needs visual effects. So that's definitely. It's definitely less a concern. I know a lot of my colleagues and peers and artists particularly that are a bit further away from the front line of, interacting with the studios. I'm very concerned at the moment. They're concerned that there's less work, therefore there's less jobs, and they're concerned because of AI. And everything at the moment is all a bit new. And whilst the industry settles and then whilst AI starts developing and landing and people understanding what it is, there's a bit of concern. I'm not concerned. I think, everything over my last 25 years, and I know a lot of my peers have worked in the industry longer, there's ebbs and flows and there's peaks and troughs, and the industry changes. I think AI is really interesting at the moment. It's a tool. I don't think it's going to replace people. It will replace tasks. People are about storytelling. People are about the creative. So I don't think that's my biggest concern. I think, like everything, you're going to need to know how to use the tool and know where its benefit is. I probably would say I'm more concerned about things like work from home. And not that I'm pro everybody coming back to the office. Our industry is, for me personally, is based on people and people coming through the industry. There's a lot of our facility are young people coming through. I always feel quite old there. And, we're always training, we're always bringing new people on. Bringing new people on when we were all in the facility is fantastic. You're dropping people, they're like sponges, they learn so fast. Whilst they're working on something, if they have a challenge, somebody can come and support them immediately. There's an incredible advantage. Now you're working from home, it's a different challenge. Yes, we've got loads of technology. We set up, Zoom meetings and chat groups that can all jump in, but it's very different. I think if AI comes in and changes things like, the rotoscoping and match move and prep work, which juniors might often start at, them not being in a facility, not being able to bounce off other people, not being able to build these relationships up. We insist all our juniors come to the facility. And what tends to happen is the mids and the seniors will recognize the juniors from being there and building a relationship, and also the tasks they do next to them. And then we'll ask for them more often. So my biggest fear across the industry is, whilst, the pandemic and working remote has benefited a lot of people, I hear lots of positives. I experienced the positives as well. They tend to be more established people where, they're not that they're learning less, but they can deliver their work in their little isolation.
Yeah.
My concern is, over the next 10 years, as AI develops, is that our artist pool aren't learning at the same rate they've previously done because they're isolated and they're not building all those lovely relationships and all those people skills and soft skills that come from it. Because as you go up the ladder and the positions, when you become a lead, then it's about managing people and talking and communicating with people. And then as you go up to being a supervisor, 2D supervisor, 3D supervisor, visual effects supervisor, it's all about people skills and navigating the best of everyone's skills. That, for me, has come from all my experiences working in small teams and with people.
No, it's interesting. And look, I appreciate your honesty and sort of being transparent on that. I think that's something that I want to happen more, having people's thoughts kind of put out there.
So to alleviate the concern, I think. I hate seeing people, the internet is a great place and a terrible place at the same time. And particularly when you look at LinkedIn, some of the messages that go out to the wider pool are fantastic and really elevating and very exciting about the industry. And others put a little bit of fear in there.
100%. And look, there's pros and cons to everything. And, listening to what you're saying, you're not coming at this in a strict, this has to happen. It's more, I quite like it when people express their opinion and thoughts via understanding, but also their thought process around benefits to situations.
Well, you've got to embrace the challenge, right? Because then if you embrace the challenge, out of it becomes a good outcome. And because, as I say, this whole industry is based on people. You have to care about people.
Yeah.
Because then you get the best out of people. Not just like from a loyalty aspect, because everyone's professional and do their job. But I found, particularly with a smaller scale visual effects company, when you're in around that 200 people like we are, is that you want everybody to really go the extra mile for the company because they care about the company and the company cares about them. So you've got to listen to them. A lot of people have really enjoyed and benefit from the work from home, just the ease of being able to walk the dog and come back to the machine. And some have struggled, and some have struggled with mental health and some have struggled just being isolated. And, you've got to recognize that as somebody that is part of running a business and running a team. You have to recognize that.
100%. And, hybrid work is great. It only works if you're in that region, being hybrid when you work in London is quite easy, huge talent pool.
We've got people scattered all over Ireland, and of course when the pandemic came and that opportunity came, people said, "Oh, it's cheaper rent or whatever, and I'll move to Galway or I'll move somewhere else in Ireland." And of course, the technology we have is fantastic, connect everybody. I do like the idea of some form of hybrid, but I certainly feel the growth part of someone's career has to be surrounded by people.
Yeah. No, I don't really disagree, to be honest. I think the element of progression has to come from that interaction. Whether you're a junior, whether you're a senior wanting to become a lead, it's hard to sort of go into battle when no one's actually behind you because they're dotted all over. And vice versa.
To get the best out of people, I'll keep repeating, you've got to care about people. You've got to know your staff.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just knowing what they're technically or artistically good at. You've got to know them as people. I was taught very early on, again, by my mentor, is that if you can go for a pint at the end of the day with your colleagues, you're doing a good thing. Mm-hmm. They're choosing their own time to spend their own time with you.
Yeah.
And I think that's very difficult when you're scattered all over the place in your bedrooms. I think there's a great relationship build you have in these small teams. And I think that's why kind of some of our successes over the last 10, 15 years have come that sort of like the 3D team would go out together, the comp team would go out together, or one of our soups every Wednesday would take the crew out for chicken wings on a Wednesday for lunch.
Love it.
And they'd all go out to the same restaurant. I think at the one point on one of the shows, I think it was Irishman, I think he took 56 people one lunch to get chicken wings. And it's all part of those little extra things, the beer and pizza night we do once a month in the facility. That's the soft skills and the things that build a really fun and interesting place to work with. When there's people like myself who's been there 23 years in screen scene, and Nico is 15 years, and Kenny, head of production, and then so many of us as crew have been there, 10, 15 plus years. There's a reason for that.
Yeah, 100%. And like you said, the reality is there's pros and cons to everything. And I think to make it clear, we're not saying here that you have to come into the facility, but there is pros to doing that, is the reality. Just as there's pros to being at home. But I guess from my personal opinion, growth comes from those interactions that you're talking about.
I mean, it's not impossible. As I say, we do have artists, in different parts of Ireland, and then you connect with and the technology is there to help. I suppose at the moment, because there's so many things that people are worried about with AI as they're coming off the strikes, what's the industry going to be like, and work from home. I think it's quite good if you can get on the same room.
I kind of sympathize with the VFX world in some ways when it comes to this as well, because from the outside looking in at times, it's one of the few industries worldwide where you don't have the choice to do your profession in your hometown. Personally, if you want to be a chef, there's a local restaurant.
Yes.
If you want to be a gardener, you can go and do that at the local golf course or whatever it is, be a greenskeeper. There's a butcher's. You can work in the city. You can get your office job. I think with visual effects, it's always been hub driven.
That's changed. That's changed. And when I was growing up and I was watching film, it was Hollywood.
Yeah.
It's LA.
Yeah.
The sort of Gladiator and then the Harry Potter period and the blossoming of the London industry expanded, and then of Canada expanded, and now we've got, I don't even know how many VFX companies there are worldwide, but almost in all corner of the world there's a VFX house, so there's an industry there. So I do think the opportunities not to have to travel and move if you don't want to, because as you said, there's a restaurant down the road. I think for me personally, finding the right place for you may mean you want to travel.
Yeah.
Some people, I know a lot of artists that have come through us in their early parts of their career have always inspired to go work for ILM.
Yeah.
Because there's a connection to the history of special effects and visual effects, and that's something they want to do. And other companies, or they want to go and live a little bit in Canada or New Zealand or wherever it is, they want to travel.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a much smaller place now. And each territory and each company have their own specialities. You look at the VS norms that have come out. If you actually go through and look at where a lot of that VFX is done, it's all over the globe.
Yeah.
And that's a testament to the sort of artistry and the skill set that is in all those different places.
Yeah. Yeah, no, fair comment. And we'll see what plays out this year. In regards to yourself and SSVFX, I hope you have a cracking 2025, buddy.
Well, it started off well.
And absolutely.
Going.
And I'm looking forward to catching up with you over in LA for the VES Awards. You got the nominations. I'm going to be sat there with you. Hoping and fingers crossed for you, buddy. But look, before we close out, I ask everyone on the show this one question. So not to put you on the spot or anything, buddy, but give me one peak of your VFX career so far. You're not even allowed to.
Yeah, no, it is tricky because, as I say, it's a long time and there's lots of highs and little highs. It's hard on an individual front to look past, winning an Emmy, because you could go your entire career and not win an Emmy. And I know from an individual point, my own journey to get there has been exciting and fantastic for me, and that's amazing. But as a collective for the company that we've been running in SSVFX and all the people involved, I'm trying to think what the peak. I'm going to go right back to my first ever thing that ever was on telly. When I was a runner back in Pluto, I used to kind of, I'd say, pester Hubert. I'd go and sit on his shoulder to just learn off him all the time.
Yeah. And
I think in a way to get rid of me, he said, why don't you go and model a hose pipe, a wheelbarrow and a barbecue? And it was for a DIY shop advert. And off I scuttled off to a room and modelled away this hose pipe, wheelbarrow and barbecue. And he was happy and he put them in this commercial. I remember when that ad came on the telly, shushing people in the room, it's the ad break, and I put this ad. And I think that as an example of what just, motivates me, excites me, is sitting in the cinema or at home when a TV series on and being proud of something you and your team have contributed to. That's definitely a peak.
Love it. I think that is a class way to close this out, Ed, and really appreciate your time. Thank you for being on this. And, look, we're going to see each other again in a few weeks. So we'll have another catch up. But yeah, really, really appreciate it. Thank you, buddy.
Not a problem.